Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. History of the Jihadist Mercenaries of the New World Disorder, and of course, my first glimpse offered to you from my new book, Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 10. Christy, the book is finally out. We've been working for so long, and finally our viewers can have a taste of it. I'm giving a lot of interviews based on this book that is filled with very interesting material. Today, of course, we're going to focus a bit on the history of the jihadist mercenaries of the New World Disorder. And we will also talk about the news of the week. But let's start with the dance macabre. Christy, how have you been? Are you preparing for your birthday?
Yeah.
It's your birthday. It's her birthday. Yes. Christy, huh?
Yay.
Celebrating this weekend.
After a certain time, you don't get so excited about it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm glad to be here. Another year. I made it. Through the New World Disorder, I made it again.
Okay. For the New World Disorder, let me show our viewers the wonderful cover of this book, both the back cover and the front cover of this book, because our Vincenzo Viceversa, in-house graphic designer, has done an incredible job here.
Yeah.
We are talking about one of the most amazing and symbolic covers I ever published, together with the content of this amazing book, which is already receiving a lot of, I tell you, a lot of approval. It's number one in Islamic history, Islamic social sciences. All kinds of people are calling me for interviews. Volume 10 of my Confessions, Islamic Freemasonry and the Secret Societies Behind Eternal Conflict in the Middle East. And here we go. The Information Dance Warfare by Leo and Christy Zagami. So here it is, guys. This is probably, I think this is my best book.
I do.
Yeah, I think this is my best book.
It's really the most complicated as well.
Also,
the one that brings everything together, I think. Makes helps people to realize a lot.
Okay.
Including moi. Okay, I have some sponsors here.
Okay, so, let's read the sponsors. Who are the sponsors of today's show?
Okay, so we have Bruce Kurdish, and we have Malgarizana Minta, and we have Leo Martinez, and we have Maximilian Malderay, and that's it.
Well,
I think if I missed anybody, no, I don't think I did.
That's
okay,
good.
That's it.
And now we have.
Thank you, everybody who bought the book. And if you haven't bought the book, you should buy the book, or you're going to get FOMO.
You're going to get FOMO. What is FOMO?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out.
I learned that when I was doing crypto, but then I stopped doing crypto. I don't do crypto anymore. I got rid of it.
And so now you no longer have any FOMO concerning crypto.
I don't.
That's okay.
I made money though, a little tiny bit.
Guys, if you want to be included amongst our sponsors, you can also, of course, donate anonymously. Here we are with the GoFundMe.com/the Leo Zagami Show. Lesule, Leo and Christy Zagami need your support. And there is also another way of supporting us, which is purchasing my books. And this week we are discussing my latest book, Volume 10 of my Confessions. And so here we are.
I can't see my flower. My flower's over here.
The flowers!
Christy's flowers! My flower's going to get cut off. Wait, oh, well, it should be on this side. Oh, well. It's on the wrong dude. I'm trying to make them even. Okay, sorry, guys.
Okay. I would like to suggest to those people who are following us at the moment on the Leo Zagami show on YouTube, the channel Leo Zagami show, that the second part of this show is always broadcast only on Rumble and X. And if you are following us on X, please share, because X multiplies a lot when you share. So please share so we can expand our Zagamian tentacles.
Ew.
Hello, Zagami, somebody saying here in the chat. Okay, so we have a book, we have a lot of information that will be inspired by this book today, but in fact the latest thing is to go on leozagami.com to get also my latest articles, guys. Very important, so we can have an idea of what is really going on. First article is dedicated to this Hamas leader who has thanked the students that we see protesting all over the campuses in Europe and America, and are actually, especially here in America, financed by Soros and company, also including the Rockefellers. And it's really crazy, this whole thing, that Hamas is thanking the students sponsored by Soros. It's also giving us an idea what is really happening here. So, Christy, let's read this article for our viewers so they can have a more clear idea of what is going on inside our campuses.
From the beginning?
Yes.
Senior Hamas official Khalid Marshall, a former member of the external leadership of Hamas operating outside Gaza, officially thanked student protesters at American universities for their protests and anti-Israel encampments and for their participation in what he defined as the Al-Aqsa
flood. Al-Aqsa is, of course, the Temple Mount, the place where you have the last mosque, you have the Dome of the Rock. This is also a place of great controversy because, of course, it is also the location of the second temple for the Jews, but also of what they regard as one of the most holy sites of Islam. However, we also know that Muhammad was long dead before the Muslims actually entered Jerusalem. So it's a little bit of but regardless of that, we have a lot more to say regarding these students who are very confused. So please, let's move forward with this. The flood of the free conference hosted in Istanbul.
Wait, who's reading, me or you?
Okay, you.
Why is it moving up?
It's kind of moving. It
Why?
Just decided to move.
Oh, that's not cool.
Okay.
I don't read that fast. Why is it moving?
Okay, no worries.
Weird.
I'm going to do it then.
Okay.
Where were you?
I was up.
I know, but it started to move. It's possessed. The browser got possessed. Okay, let me read the article.
I was right on the immediately.
Here, okay, immediately following the October 7 Hamas terrorist attacks against civilians, Mashal Khaled, this guy, called for a global Muslim uprising in support of Palestine. He emphasized the need for Muslims to sacrifice and carry out jihad, a concept whose origins and development were originally linked to the Middle Eastern Illuminati, I've explained in detail in Volume 10. So let's go to Volume 10, where I actually explain the concept of jihad and the roots of the jihad, because it's very important to understand also the roots of the jihad. And of course, we do it from my latest book, which is already having kind of a great success. And so let me show on Amazon how the book is going, because I want to blow my trumpet.
You always blow your trumpet.
I'm blowing my trumpet, but it's very important because here we are talking about a very important book, as you know. So if you go on the internet, on Amazon, you want to purchase this book, here we go. Confessions of an Illuminati Volume 10, Islamic Freemasonry and the Secret Society Behind the Eternal Conflict in the Middle East, we see that is the #1 new release now in occultism.
Occultism.
Yes, which is, but then if we go down, we also see that this book is #2 in Islamic history, in the bestsellers of Islamic history. This is a very important chart. I mean, the result is pretty impressive here, because I'm amongst some of the best authors in this sector. #2, and we have also the Satanic Verses Debunked, which is quite interesting book. Then we have #19 in History of Islam, which also includes a variety of books, of course, talking about Islam. But this is a unique book, guys, and I really advise you to purchase this book, because this book is a book that wants to bring a remedy to all this chaos, this nonsense, to all these people that are creating this idiotic protest in our universities. I mean, they are really a bunch of confused young people. And so they should actually be reading something, studying something, maybe learning something, instead of getting financed by Soros. Soros on the side of the Zionists, says somebody on the chat. Well, that somebody is a bit confused, because like I explained here in my book, Soros is a Sabbatean Frankist. Labor Zionism is a creation of the Sabbatean Frankists. We have to be a little bit more specific. And this is also a big problem. People really don't know how Zionism came into existence, how it was infiltrated, how Islam came into existence and was infiltrated, how Christianity came into it. But is there anything that is not infiltrated?
No.
It seems that everything is corrupt.
Yeah.
In this book, I show also how, of course, there was a lot of knowledge that was brought and preserved by Islam during the so-called golden age of Islam. But in reality, like I was discussing in private with a friend, all these things that the Muslims claim to have invented in reality were kind of picked up here and there during their invasions, and then, of course, they were relayed later on in their universities. They were very clever, though, in establishing these universities, and two very important ones that, of course, had behind the Muslim Illuminati. Nobody has ever talked about the Muslim Illuminati. Nobody has ever talked about the Islamic Freemasonry in this way. And so I think I did a service to humanity, finally unveiling the secrets, especially in connection to the infamous Cairo Lodge, which I often mention, because we see at one point a collaboration between British Freemasonry in particular, but also French Freemasonry, which, by the way, with the House of Hanover, the future House of Windsor, gave birth to British Israelism, so almost pushing and in a way the Jews to go back to Israel, but at the same time creating also the basis for that Salafi movement that will also become Salafi jihadism, and of course all that terrorism that is of course anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. So it's like creating the two opposites and wanting to act as a supreme God, above everybody. So here we need to understand the history of the jihadist mercenaries, and for that reason I will get Christy, of course, to read, to go inside my book, The Order of the Assassins that inspire this global jihadism, understanding also the very roots of jihadism, because people really don't know much about this. So let me introduce you to, of course, a citation which comes from my latest book. Christy, you are welcome to go here.
You're welcome to make it bigger.
Well, make it bigger. I don't know. I think you should pick up a pair of glasses.
Okay, I'll read it.
Yeah,
Prophet, I can read it. I can read it. I just took my California driving test, and I didn't even need my glasses because I take Luton.
Okay.
So I don't need it.
That's good, but
you made it bigger.
I make it bigger.
Okay, never mind.
Okay,
this Prophet, I'm reading. I'm reading.
No, but I want to say from where it's picked up. This you can find this in my latest book in the subchapter "The Order of Assassins That Inspired Global Jihadism."
Okay, Prophet Muhammad taught that there are two kinds of jihad. The main one, known as the greater jihad,
Jihad al-Akbar,
involves the individual's constant and eternal struggle with the evil and immoral aspects of the self. Immoral
aspects of the self.
This was said by Muhammad to be much more important than the lesser jihad.
So, sorry to interrupt you, which is the Jihad al-Asghar. These two kinds of jihad exist, and one has been used almost all the time to cover up the other, the more infamous one, because one is really about fighting your own demonic side and bringing out your godly side. The other one is instead about going out and killing innocent people to establish somehow the law of Muhammad, the Sharia. So please.
It is the notion of the greater jihad with its emphasis on justice, rectitude, fidelity, integrity, and the truth that gives the concept of jihad its profound meaning in Islamic theology and law. This attitude pervades the entire theory of Islamic law towards all lesser jihadist behavior, including the military jihad and the level of intention and purpose required of the believer in discharging his or her jihad obligations. It is important to understand that Islam is not just a religion and a system of theological thought. Islam is also a system of jurisprudence, one that finds its primary sources in religious texts and uses those texts to create legal norms, obligations, prescription, and prohibitions of its adherents to live and govern themselves by.
And now we go in what is known as the Sharia. So they are not only a religion, they are basically also a system that decides your way of life.
All forms of jihad, including military jihad, are therefore complex clusters of such norms, obligations, prescriptions, and prohibitions. Nevertheless, the quotation in which the Prophet says the eternal jihad...
Internal.
I said internal.
No, because I don't want to confuse it with eternal.
Okay, internal. Jihad is the greater jihad, is regarded as coming from an unreliable source by some scholars. They regard the use of jihad to mean holy war as the more important.
So here we have already people who interpret one concept in a completely different way from another set of people. And we will see this over and over again, unfortunately, in Islam. And that's why with the creation of Islam and later on with the various schisms that sprang immediately after the death of Muhammad, because even within his own family, they started to argue, and there was a war, the war of the camel, and there was a confrontation that eventually would bring the fourth caliph to be the leader of another faction known as the Shia Muslims, and later on that will give birth to another set of schismatic groups in an eternal quest for proclaiming the right interpretation or to be on the right side of Islam. Some of them even positioning Ali higher in their chart than God, than Muhammad, and almost placing Ali like a god. So, I mean, it's incredible here how we are finding already a lot of chaos since the very early stages of Islam, but we have a constant, which is jihadism. Jihadism seems to be always present, because let's not forget that when Islam started to expand, they forcefully converted people by the sword. And that was a way that, of course, it's not very godly in nature. It's like either you convert or either I kill you kind of thing. But please.
Where was I? Okay. Nevertheless, I think I was there.
Mhm.
I don't know. Nevertheless, the quotation in which the prophet says the eternal. Okay, I read that already.
Interno.
I read that already
Yeah.
because you said interno.
Yeah.
There are so many references to jihad as a military struggle in Islamic writings that it is incorrect to claim that interpretation of jihad as holy war is wrong.
So, like I said, we have two interpretations, but it is incorrect to claim that interpretation of jihad as holy war is wrong. This is very important. Even, and here I want to read, of course, from my book because it touches me personally. Even in my personal experience, the majority of Muslims I encountered in my trips across Europe, Turkey, and even the Middle East seem to interpret jihadism as an internal struggle with the self, favoring the so-called greater jihad. However, I also noted that some deceptive Muslims will cover up at times their military jihad inclination by bestowing upon the Western listener endless tales of greater jihad and inner peace. It's like at times, even in the West,
we all search for inner peace, enlightenment.
Yeah, but there is also a lot of confusion and naiveness, no? So we don't really understand Islam at times from an extent, this book is made to clarify the fact that Islam has their own Freemasons, their own Illuminati. They have been enormously influential in our own mystery schools of all kinds, including Freemasonry. And we have reached a moment of time in which the Muslims themselves need to also address the fact that it's not the greater Israel or the Crusaders the main enemy, but it's also an internal enemy, an enemy that, of course, works in course with the Western Illuminati, because the Illuminati worldwide, the ones who have worked this way, they have done it to gradually destroy all the religions or after controlling them. So it's not about Islam, it's not about Christianity, it's not about Judaism, it's about controlling Islam. It's about controlling the various schools of Islam. It's about controlling Christianity. It's about controlling Judaism, like the Sabbatian Frankists have done. So here, if we go and compare all these various people, we see that they are all kind of collaborating together, because ultimately they view religion as a tool to dominate the masses, while they think that they have the ultimate reason and that they are ultimately just a worshipper of pure science. They don't believe in God and they are their own gods. So this is ultimately, we have always said that
it's very Gnostic.
Well, that's what the Illuminati are. They are Gnostic. And so when people think of Islam, they think of a religion that hasn't, that maybe has been left out by the Illuminati and the Freemasons, while instead it's the complete opposite. And we need to understand this. So all these heresies, all these manipulations demonstrate that basically organized religion has always been hijacked, and not to make God happy, but rather the contrary. Now, jihad, because we are talking here about jihad, the fact that they can talk to us and say, oh, well, for us, the jihad is only something internal, it's a struggle. But then we have a lot of people, unfortunately, that take it literally and that, of course, continue to feed into this never-ending hate. That, by the way, is also instrumental, because the Western Illuminati want these countries to stay in a third world condition. They don't want Afghanistan to evolve from their Talibans. They don't want Iran. In the 1950s, was actually rather modern, and women were dressing like they were dressing in Europe. Nowadays, what you're seeing is the product of Islamic Republic of Iran, which is itself a product of something that was also sponsored and encouraged by the Western Illuminati. So it's important to understand all this. Now, according to one hadith, the hadith are these teachings that are also external to the Quran, so they are telling you and explaining you a bit about the things that are said by the Prophet Muhammad and the people close to him. It is about promises of something greater. And of course, we're talking about a place in paradise. We're talking about beautiful women. All these promises made the jihad something, and still make the jihad in places like Gaza, for example, all over the Middle East, something that attracts people, Muslims who follow the pursuit of jihad in an active way in their lives, particularly amongst the Palestinians, because of a reward. Now, it wasn't always like this. This reward that we are talking about came into existence because, of course, the martyrdom needed to be encouraged in some way. Something needed to be promised to these people. But where did it all start? It didn't actually start in the Sunni world. So it started actually in the Shia world. And it started with the Order of the Assassins. Today, we know very little about the very early stages of what we now call the jihad, but it's also connected to another concept, which is the concept of the ribat. And the ribat is a voluntary defense of Islam, in which these ribats were originally used as fortresses, as houses, that will guest people who fought to defend Islam in jihad. This concept of ribat, which is now very popular with the jihadists like Al-Qaeda, the Salafi jihadists like Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, ISIS, and also for the Salafi jihadists operating in the Gaza Strip. This is a very important concept, the ribat. It's a concept that basically inspired, paradoxically, the Christians and the future knights of the various orders that were established to defend Christianity and to defend also those pilgrims who will go to the Holy Land. So today, when we talk about crusaders in the Middle East, they always see the Westerners as crusaders, because they always have this hate against the Crusaders, this atavic hate against the Crusaders. They don't know that actually the Crusaders were inspired in their holy war by Islam, because the concept of holy war was not Christian. Jesus didn't teach a holy war. There was no concept of holy war until the beginning of the Crusades. So this makes you understand how paradoxically, like I said, the Muslims were actually the ones who inspired their own demise with the Crusades. So it's something that needed to be explained in the terminology Had al-Ribat, which means land of the Ribat. It's also a name that is used for Palestine, with the literal meaning is the land of standing vigilant watch on the frontier. That, understood in the context of a global jihad, is basically opposed to Palestinian nationalism. That's why sometimes they say that Hamas is not Salafi jihadism because they are not transnational, but they focus on the national interests of Palestine. But it's not true, because the Palestinian Hamas was encouraged and brought into existence thanks also to the Iranians. Now, the Iranians are Shia, and it was the Iranians from the end of the 60s, 70s, when in the West we were kind of corrupt in a university by communism, by all that rubbish, the Red Book of Mao and all this rubbish that unfortunately has brought us to where we are now in a university with a bunch of leftist professors. We have instead the even more dangerous situation developing in the universities of Iran, for example, in which they were mixing both elements of communism and Islam together.
Oh, wonderful. So
Islamo-communism became really the force that in a way encouraged the Ayatollah Khomeini to start his job to then overthrow in 1979 the Pahlavi dynasty, which of course was controlled by Freemasons that then went into exile. In fact, in my book, I explain how, and this is quite a revelation, and I must thank Christy also because she made me read a book by this mobster. Who is this mobster, Christy? So
I forgot his name. What's his name? Oh, Johnny Russo. Yeah,
Russo.
He's from New York.
He's a big mobster, okay? Now, this mobster...
I don't know him.
No, but...
I heard about him.
And she's got this book, and she said, Leo, read it. I think you might like it. And I read it, and I found that he basically confessed that in the last days of the Pahlavi dynasty in Iran, he was booked, he was employed by the Vatican to go there in Iran with a group of mobsters to collect all the gold and riches of the last Shah and bring it abroad. This is something that the Iranians to this day don't know, because Khomeini never admitted that. Khomeini went on TV and said the Shah left with nothing, but Mohammad Reza Pahlavi instead, who became the last acting Shah of Iran from the Pahlavi dynasty, not only left with all the gold of Iran, but he did it thanks to the Grand Lodge of Iran, who later on will become established in America as the Grand Lodge of Iran in Exile, that now has their offices in Santa Monica, here in California. So this book also makes you understand that the jihadi tendencies that were actually born within Shia Islam and the Order of the Assassins, the Nizari, with the so-called Holy Man of the Mountain, well, this guy became an inspiration for a guy called Ayatollah Said Mahmoud Ali Taleghani. Taleghani is one of the most important clerics of the time, the most important after Ayatollah Khomeini. He was a Shia Islamic scholar who since the 60s wrote extensively and talked publicly about the concept of martyrdom. And it's this guy who went to the Palestinians and converted them to the concept of martyrdom and ultimate jihad. Even if they were Shia, and Hamas later on, that was established by one of his of the followers of Taleghani, is a Sunni, this doesn't matter, because the concept of jihadism had already crossed in the Sunni world a long time before, with another guy, Jamaleddin al-Afghani, this incredible figure, a Freemason, friend of Madame Blavatsky, considered the father of modern Islam. if that's
friend of Blavatsky.
Yeah,
oh, that's just lovely.
Friend of Blavatsky. He was initially also a British intelligence operative. He managed to finance all this because the Brits initially were financing him, and he also created a Grand Lodge in Egypt of Freemasons who were more political in nature. In fact, he broke from his original lodge, which was a regular lodge on the United Lodge of England that, as you know, prohibits religion and politics, to then go under the Grand Orient of France. And similar things happened in Iran. That's why I mentioned, I mean, apart from the fact that Jamaluddin al-Afghani, aside from the name, he was actually Iranian. And he already in his time had basically brainwashed and sent this guy to kill the Shah who was in charge of it. So already that was a kind of a jihadist maneuver. But going back to Iran, in the 70s and in the 60s and 70s, this Taleghani guy was a guy who, like I said, brought back the concept of martyrdom, and he was very influential. He was instrumental in shaping the groundswell movement, which led to the Iranian Revolution and brought Khomeini to power. And Taleghani basically died suddenly in a very mysterious way in 1979 after actually being part of the Assembly for the Final Review of the new Iranian Constitution. And he was praised by the Western press, who might have actually preferred him than Khomeini. So the fact that he suddenly dies is always a little bit suspicious, I think. But also, it's interesting because, like I said, the Freemasons then that were in charge with the Shah stole all that money, but the Pahlavi dynasty itself, and then there was another secret society inspired by the Assassins that was close to this important figure which I mentioned, Ayatollah Taleghani. This secret society, which slash terrorist, because that's what they really were, because a lot of these secret societies are also terrorists in the Middle East, was known as the Fedayeen el-Islam. Now, the Fedayeen el-Islam started already from the 1950s. It means self-sacrifices of Islam. Was an Islamist assassination group similar to the Order of Assassins. And Taleghani, at one point, was accused of having aided and helped the leader of this Fedayeen al-Islam. And they actually carried on a series of successful killings immediately after the Second World War. So this was not, this was a group, and basically Taleghani emphasized the resistance against Israel, and for this reason traveled many times to Palestine. So there is a direct connection with the jihadist, and let's not forget also, of course, what emanates from the Muslim Brotherhood, because Hamas is ultimately an emanation of the Muslim Brotherhood, but it is also helped to this day by Iran. And people might be astonished, but this book brings you evidence with credible sources that it was Ayatollah Khomeini who asked Ali Akshah to assassinate John Paul II. And Akshah, in his book, which is called The Promise Me Paradise, My Life and the Truth About the Attack of the Pope, which never came out in the English language, says that he was trained and prepared in Iran to go and kill John Paul II. So this is quite shocking. And why do you think he was trained to go and kill John Paul II? Because the Vatican was the place where all this gold and all these riches from Iran was brought by Rus and those mafiosi. In the last days of the Shah, when they were all leaving Iran, and it was in the January of 1979, a very chaotic situation. These mobsters, all dressed like mobsters, out of 70s style Godfather look, headed by Russo. Russo went and picked up his team in Sicily directly. He didn't only bring them from America. He went and picked up the original Sicilians because they were close.
He was working for the Vatican?
Yeah.
So nobody put him in jail?
No, Russo didn't go to jail. He came back to America and then lived a tranquil life.
That's fucked up.
But remember, that all this brought the gold of the Pahlavi was brought in the Vatican, and at that point, when
that Vatican sucks, that's true.
When Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, he said no, Pahlavi left with nothing. But he knew that Pahlavi has sold everything. So what he does, he calls Ali Akshah, and he arranges also with his allies in the West, in the Italian mafia, because they also had allies. Because let's not forget that Khomeini came to power also because the West wanted him to come to power and overthrow the Shah. So here we are with the attempted assassination of John Paul II. And the story of the Pahlavi gold is truly amazing, but the story also of the Pahlavi and Freemasonry is truly amazing, because you have to understand the Pahlavi dynasty that arrived in Iran in the 100 years ago, basically. It wasn't like they had been there for centuries and centuries. The guy who started this dynasty was a military who overthrew the past Shah from another dynasty. And then the son, Mohammed Reza Pahlavi, became the second and last monarch. So this dynasty lasted 2 monarchs. It didn't last that much, but they managed to stay in power. Initially, you see, the problem with the Shah, with the Pahlavi dynasty, is that the first one was Reza Khan, who ruled between 1925 and 1941, very much inspired also by Hitler and Mussolini. So he didn't want the Freemasons to have any kind of control. The son came into power in the 40s, and then there was a coup d'etat aided by the CIA to keep him in power in the 50s, and this was followed by the reestablishment of Freemasonry, which then became very powerful. And the first form of Freemasonry that I explained was founded in the 50s in Iran, refounded, because Freemasonry existed already in Iran. Iranian princes had already been initiated in England 2 centuries prior to that. I mean, there was a long history of the Iranians being fixated with the Illuminati, with the Freemasons, with being part of the elite. They think they were missing, they were missing out on something. You have to understand that Iran is very different from the rest of the Arab, because it's not Arab, it's Persia. It's a completely different race, the Aryans. So when the first Pahlavi came to power, he said, well, we are the real Aryans, because they call themselves Aryans. So then he said, wow, Hitler likes the Aryans. So but of course, Hitler didn't really like, his idea of Aryans were blonde thing. The Aryans of Iran are more like me, they are dark. So it's a little bit difficult here to explain that in the end, Reza Khan was very much a typical figure of his era that sided with Hitler and Mussolini and the losing faction of the Second World War. But in the end, the son was kept into power because, of course, what is the alternative to the Pahlavi that was starting to creep in? It would be that alternative that then crept in everywhere else in the world. People supported by Russia, communists, and forces that, of course, were not in line with the American ideas. So it's very important, though, in my book, I explain how the first lodge that was established, Grand Lodge, that was established in Iran, wasn't a regular Grand Lodge. It was actually connected to the Cairo Lodge. This Cairo Lodge, guys, is a lodge that goes back almost over 1,000 years. Christy has edited the book, so she saw the story, the development of this lodge. This lodge comes from a place called the House of Knowledge. Let's go and show, because there is still a building that exists in Cairo that represents this Cairo House of Knowledge. Let me show it so people can have an idea of what we are talking about. The Cairo House of Knowledge was a sort of emanation of the Cairo Lodge, a university that shaped up the basis of what is today one of the most important, the Al-Azhar University in Cairo, one of the most influential in the Islamic world. Is known as Dar al-Him, House of Knowledge, and it was created during the Fatimid dynasty. And then later on, of course, saw the competition of the House of Wisdom. What is the House of Wisdom? The House of Wisdom is basically a place in Baghdad, also known as the Grand Library of Baghdad, that was believed to be a major Abbasid era public academy and intellectual center in Baghdad. But wherever these public centers were based, these important centers of knowledge, even in those days, just like in America, you have the Yale University, and behind it you have the Skull and Bones that are, pulling the strings. There you have secret societies pulling the strings. So the history of the jihadist mercenaries of the New World Disorder really starts when this Jamaluddin al-Afghani gives birth to the basis of what will become Salafism. Salafism, let me explain for the layman, in layman terms, is not always Salafi jihadism, but it eventually became the Salafi movement. It's divided in two. You have the Salafi movement of Salafism, which is a revival moment within Sufi Islam that also gives birth to Wahhabism, and then you have a Salafi jihadism. It is basically a socio-religious movement that sprang out in the late 19th century. So while in Europe we had Illuminism, and later on this Illuminism would kind of, with the Illuminati, their plan was to destroy all religions and the monarchies, and so on. Gradually the society became more and more less and less religious. In the Middle East, Illuminism wasn't really something they would buy in the same way. But in reality, that house knowledge had been in secret an inspiration for the Illuminati in the West, because that lodge behind this house of knowledge was said to be the lodge of reason, which only believed in science. So we have the Salafi movement that it is it's almost like a reaction to the growing modernism. Like the more we were advancing here in the West with inventions, with the emancipation of women, the modernization of our society, we were separating state and religion in a very firm way, the more Islam was reacting in a completely opposite way. They were going instead in a completely opposite direction. They were kind of going back to what they called the pious predecessors, the Salafi. And the pious because Salafism comes from the word Salafi, which are the first 3 generations of Muslims after Muhammad. So the ones, his companions, the people who first started this whole religious movement, religion. Now, the conservative Salafis have one person they regard as their, and this guy, of course, when you see him, you will say, geez, man, this guy looks pretty, it's another bearded man, of course. Here we have Mohammed Rashid Rida. But these people, who people think, there must be some ignorant Muslims who don't know anything out of the Quran. Yeah, sure. Do you really think that from out of Egypt? These people were Freemasons. They were Freemasons. They had their own lodges. They had made alliances with the British intelligence so they could sabotage the Ottoman Empire. There was a lot of interest in Great Britain to expand on one side the concept of British Israelism, on the other sabotage the Ottoman Empire, so then chaos will erupt. And eventually chaos erupted after the end of the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire went on for centuries, 8 centuries. It stabilized the region. It recognized the rights of the holy people in the book, so Jews and Christians and the so-called Sabaeans. These were recognized in the book by Muhammad, so they were not touched. Eventually they were taxed differently, or they were not given too much positions of power, but at times they had position. So the real progression towards chaos in the Muslim world was unfortunately inspired by the Anglo-Saxon world and by the British Empire, because this is, and by also the French in a way. The French also had areas of interest in the Middle East. Still to this day, Lebanon is considered, the Sykes-Picot Agreement puts Lebanon under France, meaning that these were great colonial powers. They had interest worldwide. France was a big colonial power. Napoleon arrived in Egypt. He himself wanted to be initiated in the Great Pyramid. And of course, this means also with the expansion of the French and the English, in the Middle East, it means the expansion of Freemasonry, because they brought together with them Freemasonry. Now, there is, in my book, I explain how these lodges expanded all over the Middle East and what kind of rituals they used, the rites, like the rite of Memphis, for example, Memphis and Mizraim. I know you make that look because you were actually initiated.
What the heck?
I know.
It didn't feel very good, by the way.
Yes. But it was an experience.
Yeah, it was.
It was an experience.
It wasn't a good one.
It wasn't necessarily a good one, but you wanted to do it, so I said, okay, do it. You can't stop Christy when she wants to do something.
Who wanted to do it?
Well, actually, you wanted to do it. I said, okay, go.
I didn't want to do it. You wanted me to do it.
I just said, okay, do it.
No, you wanted me to do it.
Okay, whatever. But in any case, it was an experience.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
There were some nice people, and I got to go into that nice church, and I met a nice Russian boy, and I wrote about it in my book, so I had something to write about. Otherwise, I wouldn't have anything to write about if I hadn't gone through all these things, and nobody would buy my book at all. So I'm actually a Freemason, thanks to him. Didn't really enlighten me at all, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot.
Yes, because they were working with the French charter in London, because English Freemasonry is only for men, the traditional form of Freemasonry. And now you have also Freemasonry for women, but it's separated. They were working under a French charter that guaranteed the possibility of mixing men and women in the same lodge.
Yeah.
And that charter also was employed in Egypt, though the Memphis especially led. Why? Because, of course, this... and then when we go and see the history of the Memphis and Mizraim,
was it Sari that was the Grand Master of that?
Well, for the world, for the Sovereign Sanctuary of one of the most important factions. Yeah, he's the head of the Sovereign Sanctuary. But in any case, we're talking about a rite of Freemasonry, which is also connected to Judaism. Is actually, if we go and see who gave birth to these rites, it was actually Sabbateans.
Lovely.
So it was within the Jewish world, the Sabbateans who gave birth to. So here we have. By the way, I noticed one thing that we are basically over the limit time for YouTube, and so I want to invite.
You forgot to do it. You didn't do the thing. I was thinking about it, but I figured you knew what you were doing.
Okay, no. But I want to remind all the people who are following us on YouTube that we go on for the second part of the show on Rumble and X. Don't be lazy. Join us on Rumble and X now.
Go Rumble, guys.
Go Rumble. There is already a lot of people that have tuned in.
How many are over there?
Hmm?
How many are over there?
Well, we have on Rumble about 60 people, and we have 60 people though that are.
Everybody go over there.
There's still 40 to 50 people. That
some people can't go over there because some people don't have Rumble because maybe they're in a country that doesn't have Rumble.
Okay.
So then you can go on X.
You can go on X.
And you don't have to have an account.
And eventually, if you don't have X, we will upload it also on Telegram.
It's on BitChute too.
Yes, and we will upload it also on BitChute.
It's all over the
please
place.
Move from.
Are we on Facebook yet?
No, not yet.
Tomorrow is the day.
We will be on
You've
Facebook.
Been blocked.
I will be blocked for 2 months on Facebook.
Oh yeah, you get off on my birthday.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Happy birthday.
we will be basically from next week back also on Lesule on YouTube, which is actually probably gonna be eliminated soon, that channel, because it's kind of like the last strike. But I would like to see you on the other side on Rumble and X, or you can find the link on the description of this video. Just put Leo Zagami on Rumble and you will immediately get my channel. Well, I see you after, of course, the great sound of Vincenzo Viceversa. But I would like to read our sponsors before that, because I forgot to give them a nice applause. So
well, I have to go back on my phone because I didn't write it down.
Okay.
Okay, wait, I have it right here.
Okay.
All right. Malgarizada Minta and Maximilian Maldere, I like your name. And Leo Martinez, I like your name too. And Bruce
Codish, yes, and Osvaldo Martinez. Yes.
Wait, that's the guy in Italy, though.
No, I think he's in.
Oh, okay. No, Osvaldo, he's in Italy. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Is
you
it?
have one less.
In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction.